We are so excited to be back with you. It's been a while since Anthony and I have done a podcast, just the two of us. We've had a lot of guests on, which has been amazing to be able to talk with people in the community, and we hope to continue doing that. And we've got some people lined up that we're really excited about. So when an opportunity comes up for us to just talk nutrition and wellness with just each other, I think that's really fun for us. Like it gives us a chance to really dive in and really be kind of with the challenges that a lot of people can face or are thinking through. So welcome to the Well-ish podcast, sponsored by Iowa Specialty Hospital, where real life meets better health. We're your hosts. I'm Derek.
I'm Anthony.
Let's dive in. Once again, welcome to the Well-ish podcast. I'm your host, Derek, and that's Anthony over there.
It's been like 3 times since you let me do that.
Sorry, my bad. Well, we do it in the intro, so I don't even think about it. So today we are really, really excited to have a chance to talk about the new dietary guidelines that just got released. I think every time that these come out, and again, we're young professionals. I think that's pretty clear. But at the same time, we've been in this space long enough now, the two of us, at least whether it was in school or now as a professional, that we've had 2 of these released during our time.
Yeah, I guess I was going to say 3, but so 2 to 3.
2 to 3, right? 2 to 3.
My first year, Iowa State was
very beginning.
Yeah,
right?
This was big talk with 2015.
That would have been the 15 one.
Yeah. So that was kind of fun.
But this is such a great opportunity to just revisit foundation, right? Foundation of nutrition. Because I think so much of what gets talked about is things that are going wrong, things that people have challenges with. And that is real life, right? And I think that's really important to note. But at the same time, building foundation, what is foundation? These guidelines can help shape that a little bit, right? And so today we're going to kind of dive into the new dietary guidelines a little bit. We're going to do a little bit of compare and contrast, kind of offer some thoughts, just help make these a little more digestible for all of you, and hopefully, maybe even shape the ways that we're going to communicate with patients moving forward as well. So super excited for today.
Yeah, I'm pumped for this. I'm not as active on social media as others are, around my age, but I obviously hear about all the stuff that's being talked about and all the controversies. And even in our wellness committee meeting, someone mentioned, don't the dietary guidelines have a lot of controversy right now? And I think we're here to talk about whether they do or don't, and kind of really also paint the picture as to what their purpose is, because I think that is not well understood. Little things are being taken away from it and used in a manner that maybe are like either demonizing or fear-mongering against a food group or a different food tribe, whatever the case is, right? And it literally says guidelines in the title, right? And I think you've talked about this a lot, staying in your lane, and that's what these are, is kind of giving you an idea as to what that lane is, and it's not individualized, it's not personalized. It's just more honestly for the federal government and federal government programs. So that's what the primary purpose of this was. So anyway, before I keep going down that hole, I'm pumped for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't we kind of just go over kind of the highlights of the new guidelines that we saw? Is that a good place to start, do you think? Yeah,
let's do it. Okay. You want to break it down so I have them here?
Yeah, perfect. We can kind of go through it there. So I think just to jump right in, there are a couple of key changes that are listed in there, and we'll get to that. But I think it's really important to note that there's not that many changes, right? There's changes in language and kind of how things are described. But overall, and there's definitely change in emphasis, right? I think that's a big one. But in terms of the kind of the science behind a lot of it, not a lot has changed except for protein. We'll talk about that. And just in terms of the recommendation. But to start, let's talk about the food pyramid. I think that's kind of maybe the hot button part of it. So
before we jump into that, I want to tailor off of your comment. Yeah, there really was not too many differences between the previous 2020 to 2025 guidelines and the 25 to 2030, which when I first watched them in like the video, especially like the press conference and things like that, when they announced all these new guidelines, it kind of made me a little irritated as a health professional, especially a registered dietitian, right? But then once I actually went and read the document, calmed me down because I'm like, okay, what's being said maybe isn't also what's like how you can read it and what's being written. So yeah, starting with the food pyramid, I think the big the big thing is it is no longer a pyramid, it's upside down. And maybe I'll actually
What is
put a
that? What is
graphic
that?
on here.
A cyclone? What is that? The
Hey,
food tornado?
go clones.
Hey.
Cyclone State, baby. Um, but yeah,
Oh
it's
no, you're gonna.
I'm just adding all the
There
controversy
you
here.
go.
Anywho, so yeah, the pyramid is in theory turned upside down, where
Mhm.
a lot of the foods that used to be at the bottom of the pyramid are still at the bottom, but they're suggesting that you do less of it. Right, the main one is whole grains.
Whole grains being a big
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
And then at the top, you're going to see more of those. You see fruits and vegetables, which is great. Whole foods is talked about quite a bit in this document.
Definitely
And
an
then
emphasis for sure.
animal proteins and animal fats is
Mhm.
heavily favored in the image. And we'll get to this, but not really as favored within the actual
The
document.
numbers themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
Like I think that like of all of the things to point out is that like I mentioned, the protein recommendation has shifted, right? But other than that, truly the numbers and a lot of the research backed numbers haven't really changed. The perception of them is definitely attempting to be shifted and moved, right?
Yeah.
Which take that as you will, right? But the pyramid doesn't completely reflect maybe the numbers themselves in terms
Yeah.
of like recommended numbers of servings throughout the day and that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
So I did go and look at some social media videos for people's reactions, and one that I came across was a former coworker of ours, Taylor Carrick.
Oh yeah.
Right, she does a great job. But she was talking through it, and one thing that stood out to me was she was talking about how confusing the original pyramid was,
Mm.
especially as a young individual. And then she really enjoyed, and I would also agree, I really enjoy the My Plate,
Yeah.
because visually it's easy to understand.
Yeah.
Like you look at the My Plate photo and it breaks it down like how many, like what portion or size of that plate should be what food group, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of to your point where this maybe doesn't quite do that for you.
Yeah.
It maybe adds a little bit more confusion than clarity, whereas especially for public health, I think the goal is clarity. And I think that's also now then where the controversy lies with a lot of the stuff that's going around about it. So,
Yeah.
so that's the general overview of what the food pyramid now looks like. Do they still call it a pyramid? Is this called a pyramid?
I think so.
It's called
I
the
don't know.
upside down pyramid.
I would have a hard time. I feel like for me, like I've been using using the guidelines a little bit just because they came out and reminded me, oh, hey, this is a good
Yeah.
thing to use for people. I would have a hard time like teaching the pyramid itself, just because
Totally.
it's like hard to communicate what it's really trying to say. Because if you look at the food pyramid, I mean, it's emphasizing clearly meats and vegetables, right? De-emphasizing fruit and whole grains, which as dietitians help someone create a plan, right? Like if you think about my plate as your example, like half of that plate was some form of carbohydrate, right? And when I go to calculate somebody's needs, that is still the case, right? I'm really not diving too far below 50% of calories coming from carbohydrate, right? I mean, there are some specific scenarios maybe where it might make sense to go a little bit under
Sure,
that, but
sure.
not by a ton,
Yeah.
right? And so I think because carbohydrates are your brain's favorite fuel source, right? And so I think that's why like this image is confusing and hard to like communicate
Sure.
because it's de-emphasizing some of the foods that as we see later in the document, they emphasize.
Yeah.
Right? Like, which is so hard and so
It's
confusing.
Totally. And I think it adds just an unfortunate extra hurdle for us as nutrition professionals and even as other healthcare professionals to have to navigate through those questions prior to being able to get to what we want to get to, right? And that just takes up more time. So that is an unfortunate thing about that. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So, all right, should we dive in?
Sure.
All right, first thing is eat the right amount for you, which personally I love.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Now, where I think this is going to be my biggest gripe across the board is that I did read the I think it was like 65-page previous document. And I would actually use a lot of those snips. I'd actually clip it and send it to patients when I was seeing patients more often because it really had an educational piece to it. And unfortunately, I feel like this just lacks that,
Mhm.
which I totally get. Reducing it makes a lot more sense for people, but where can they find the like further resources,
Yeah.
and where can we find those to also provide for
Yeah.
patients? And then the second thing I'm a nut about, I love seeing the scientific literature that is tied to it, and there's no citations in this.
Yeah.
So that kind of bothered me a little bit. So anyway, eat the right amount for you. Love that. Personalizing calories, personalizing nutrition. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think I totally agree with you. I think that that statement is the right one, right? Like, no person is the same. Not a single person is the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of probably my biggest gripe with, like, honestly, nutrition education in general, but also like the nutrition facts panel, right? It makes it, the way things have been built in around nutrition has made people feel like there is a right way and a wrong way. And the right
Sure.
way is based on this nutrition facts panel. The number of people that come into my office and are talking about eating the right serving size, and then like, well, I had one serving, and I'm like, just because it says one serving on the side of the box doesn't mean that's the right serving for you,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Because I mean, how many people do we look at and say, like, let's calculate your numbers. Let's say someone's an athlete, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at 25, 26, maybe even 3,000 calories just for their resting energy expenditure, right? That's before even calculating in the activity, because they're maybe just a bigger person, or
Yeah.
maybe their activity is massive, like thinking about a swimmer, right?
Hmm.
Like, they're not going to exist on 2,000 calorie diet very well, right? Now, I know there's been some research out there that maybe like kind of goes back and forth on that a little bit, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
And I would love to dive into that sometime. But like, at the end of the day, majority of people don't just live in this 2,000 calorie box.
Hmm.
They're either above it or below it or somewhere else, right? And so I think eating the right amount for you is really, really important. I think without the citations, without the extra education piece, like, obviously makes it a little easier for, the average citizen to digest, someone who hasn't gone through any kind of nutrition education or anything like that. But I would argue that the previous guidelines, they weren't like hard to understand. I felt like they were pretty plain. It was pretty plain spoken. They were just long. And
Yeah.
so it's like, it was like reading a textbook at times, which isn't the worst thing in the world, right? Like, chance to do some learning. I think this leaves a lot of room for us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
There's a lot of room for
And
everyone.
so I think it's really important that, if you are someone who is like looking at this and has questions, like, go find a dietitian. Go
Mhm.
find someone who is well versed in the science and kind of the understands the foundation, but can take that next step with you
Yeah.
and can help guide you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought about that a lot last night, especially when I was thinking about this podcast coming up. How many people, though, are able to actually afford reaching out to those
I know.
experts? And that's where it gets into a whole nother like question. So,
That's broader,
so
isn't
again,
it? Oh
yeah.
my
So again,
gosh.
like it kind of is bouncing off your point. Like, yes, I totally agree. If you have the capability, if you know someone that maybe you can go to without having to spend too much money, that's a nutrition professional, or a dietitian, whatever the case is,
Mhm.
fantastic. If not, that's where I really thought that textbook, like more public health, easy to digest, easy to read
Yeah.
document was maybe a little
Yeah.
bit better. But anyway, the
Which
last couple notes I have
it's
here.
still out there,
Oh,
right?
it's
I
still
mean,
out there.
like,
They're all still out there.
you can still read it.
Yeah.
Maybe insert some of the, because there's a couple things in here that would be good to pull to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna say the lack in the education part, like talks about just paying attention to portion sizes, and I just wrote down like what are portion sizes, because to your point, nutrition labels now are required to do it to be what the average person actually uses for a serving, not actually based on any sort of serving requirement for
Yep.
an individual, right? So I actually just picked up, I think it was granola, and the serving size is, I think it was 3/4 of a cup, but then it also had a smaller one for 1/3 of a cup because that's what they want people to see. But the serving size that they're required to put on there is 3/4 of a cup because more
Yeah.
likely than not, people are using 3/4,
Hmm.
right? So it just gets, confusing. And then last thing, it talks about like staying hydrated. Just says hydration is key factor in overall health, which absolutely,
Yep.
but it just leaves it at that. So what is
Mm.
being hydrated? So anyway,
I think that like when it comes to hydration, there is, I mean, obviously we do calculation and there's
yeah,
and that kind of thing, but also like if you're not drinking water, drink more water. I mean, you can feel it too. You can feel when you're dehydrated, right? If you pick up a water bottle and your first instinct is to like drink half of it, that means you probably haven't been drinking enough water, right? Your body craves it. It's usually good to, if you're not drinking very much water, set a goal, 32 ounces, 64 ounces, work towards that goal, keep going, start making that your habit. So,
yeah, you can make it the majority of your liquid consumption.
but as it pertains to the guidelines, they don't really give a whole lot of direction. That's very true.
Yeah. So next category.
Next category.
This is where I think, I'm going to let you lead this off, but prioritize protein foods at every meal.
Yeah. So
Very
I think this one is kind of my favorite, right? So this has been a shift in the scientific community and the nutrition community in the last few years. And obviously, there has been a big social media push to emphasize protein, probably too much at times, right?
Sure.
It's very like, it's become we'll call it a golden ticket, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But protein is an important part of our diet, and kind of the old research that it wasn't focused on thriving, more just on surviving. And so I will say, I think these numbers help catch up.
Yeah.
Right? So it's 1.2 to
Totally.
1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And I saw you had the little calculation on there to make it more understandable.
So for pounds, it would be 0.55 to 0.72 grams per pound, just because, no one in the United States uses kilograms. So,
Yeah.
So 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram, equivalent to 0.55 to 0.72 grams per pound. So if you weigh 150 pounds, you're going to multiply that by 0.6 to 0.7, right? That's probably an easier way to do it. And that will give you the amount of grams you need per day of protein.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, no, I think that's honestly, I think that's kind of an exciting shift for the public to see that. Obviously, like I said, there's been a big push, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that has been just like, oh wow, this is a huge revelation, right? But to see the support there in the guidelines is good, just because that's one of those things that again makes our job a little easier, right? Where it says like, hey, like we can point to the guidelines and say, look, this is what the scientific community and those, is agreed upon, so we can kind of just take that and move forward.
With that though, this is getting way into the weeds. Well, a couple things. First, it prioritizes high quality nutrient-dense protein, which totally agree. It talks about, different sources. It does throw in the plant-based sources, like your beans, legumes, lentils, all those things, nuts, seeds, soy products.
Yeah.
One thing, so the whole goal of this document was to reduce a lot of like the nonsense, right? And I just thought this one was funny, where it's like swap deep fried cooking methods with the other cooking methods in place here.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, yeah, I think everyone knows that one. So, out of everything that we had to include in here, you put that.
Yeah.
But
that's funny. That doesn't actually pertain to protein.
I know. I know.
In the protein section.
Yeah.
Oh well.
But when looking at the
Throw it in.
protein goals, this is where, the personalization and the individualization comes into the conversation. And to your point earlier, when we're talking about different sizes or different types of like exercise, right? Whether you're a full-on athlete to maybe more of a sedentary individual, that 1.2 to 1.6, like, are we talking about your, and this is where if we're getting to the weeds here, but your current body weight, your ideal body weight, like if you are someone that, could lose 50 pounds, do you really need to be eating up to, I don't know how many grams, it would be, right? So like, where is the right number for you?
Ooh, that's a good, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, it gets into it walks us closer to surplus and deficit, right? And I think that's an important thing to understand. Like, obviously, it's so much more than that, but if we're doing all the other things right and genetics we're feeling we're doing the right things for us, right? at that point, then eating a little more is going to help you gain weight, and eating a little less is going to help you lose it. But like I said, there's so much more that goes into it
Yeah,
than just that, right? So,
absolutely. Yeah.
um, but yeah, no, I think that's an interesting question. And one of the things that I tell my patients all the time, right? Because I see people that come in eating usually, honestly, not enough. That's more common than eating too much, right? Um, and so what I tell them is like, we have this. If this is the whole range of our our nutrition, this is 0, and this is way 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 too much, right? We want to live here, right? And so this 1.2 to 1.6 lives in this zone
Hmm.
is where it is. And so it's like, all right, maybe I want to eat in a deficit. All right, I'll eat like 1.2. Maybe I want to eat in the surplus 1.6, and I want to gain muscle, want to maintain. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things. And also too, like eating in that, it's just a range, right? Like there's no way
Yeah.
you're like, you might shoot for 1.6 every day, but you're gonna fall short and get 1.1 some days. Some days you'll get 1.4.
Mm.
Like one day out of 30 that you'll get 1.6. Maybe one day you have a protein shake and go 1.8, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a range. So yeah, overall, it gives you the specific recommendation, which is nice, and it is a little bit elevated compared to the
Yeah.
prior recommendations, which is also
Yeah.
adequate, I think.
Do you feel like like you have it in front of you there, like
Hmm.
the emphasis on animal proteins versus plant-based proteins? What's that kind of look like in that section?
Yeah,
Is there an
I
emphasis?
so it said no. There's not. It doesn't emphasize it. I would say it says consume a variety of protein foods, which I totally agree with. A variety. I
Mhm.
think that's key there, right?
Yeah.
Because too much of anything is obviously not okay.
Yeah.
But also mixing in days where maybe it's not always red meat. You know, you have either white meat, fish, and then some plant-based proteins, either to
Mhm.
supplement that or as like a swap for that day,
Mhm.
right? And then it does just emphasize the meat one more time where it says consume meat with no or limited added sugars, refined carbohydrates, starches, chemical additives, all those things, which that's kind of what we know is, right? Anything that like the sausages and the bacons maybe, or like the things that have like especially like the sweetened bacons, like
Yeah.
making sure we're steering clear of those. Less processed meat, more natural meat, I guess,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, like Whole
So
Foods. Whole
whole
Foods.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I would say it is pretty, um, well-rounded and neutral
Good.
when it comes to what it says right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if there's anything we've learned so far is like, dive past the food pyramid and get into the actual words they use,
Yeah.
because I think those are a little more
Yeah.
evenly balanced, a little more neutral.
Totally.
What's
Yeah.
next?
Consume dairy. That's it.
Consume dairy.
Consume
Okay, tell
dairy.
me more. What else? What does
All
it
right.
say there?
So it emphasizes when consuming dairy, include full fat dairy with no added sugars. Dairy is an excellent source of protein, healthy fats, vitamins, and minerals.
Mhm.
And then it finishes with serving goals. There are 3 servings per day as part of a 2,000 calorie dietary pattern, adjusting as needed on your individual caloric requirements. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll come back to a point that I have with this when we get into a different area.
Mhm.
But again, one of my gripes is what is 3 servings? Is it based on the nutrition label? Is it based on like an equivalence of cups? Like what does that look like? And it just kind of lacks that recommendation. It actually, I'm pretty sure it mentioned talking to a healthcare professional and like the little snippet in the first page about this stuff. But again, most people aren't doing that, and they aren't even reading this document.
Yeah.
They're just hearing the way that's being portrayed, and things are just being kind of skewed when it being spoken, right? So overall, I don't know if I don't totally agree with the full fat dairy
Mhm.
statement, but as far as like the servings, I'm assuming it's the same serving recommendations as the previous guidelines.
Yeah.
It's probably right on par with what they
Yeah.
did.
100%. I think that there's just I think the biggest challenge with this document is it's leaving so much room for like it's leaving too much room for interpretation.
Mm.
Which I mean, obviously, one of the first things says eat the right amount for you. So I get maybe why, but at the same time, like, and I think I know the point you're going to come back to with the fat, and we'll talk about that with
Mhm.
like saturated fat, right? But social media, it takes an inch and makes it a mile, like
Yeah,
immediately, right? And so there's just so much space in this for that,
yeah,
and so people are going to hear it second, third hand. So I read the document. Form your own opinions on it, sure, but read the document. Don't try and take it from somewhere else before you have read through it yourself.
Yeah. I always like to say just have a healthy sense of skepticism, right? Especially if someone is like taking this and skewing it or just doesn't really quite sound right. But then also they suggest you should go buy this supplement or like start to like push you towards purchasing something or their program, whatever the case is. Like have a healthy source of skepticism. I think that's a really good thing in everything with everything in
Yeah,
life. So
absolutely.
it does point out gut health. It really just kind of says how trillions of bacteria live in our microbiome and getting some sort of like getting good sources of fermented foods.
Yeah.
And also fibers, high fiber foods. So
Mhm.
like, and it talks about vegetables, fruits, kefir, which I've been a big fan of recently,
Yeah, I like
kimchi,
that.
sauerkrauts, anything that's fermented that has those extra bacteria, but good bacteria for
Yeah.
our gut. So I like that little plug, which I can't remember if that was in the previous one.
I don't think so. I feel like
Yeah,
it was mentioned slightly, but
could have
not
been thrown in there somewhere.
but like in the with how short this document is, that's pretty emphasized.
Yeah,
To
totally.
bring anything up in general for
Yeah,
this document is very emphasized.
it's a
So,
fourth of a 10-page
yep,
document or a fourth of a
exactly.
1 page. Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, next up, eat vegetables and fruits throughout the day. Honestly, outside of just not explaining the serving sizes, I don't have any issues.
Yeah, I don't mind that at
Yeah,
all.
this one, yeah, totally favor eating high fibrous foods, which is, going to be
Mhm.
your fruits, vegetables, and then obviously beans, legumes, whole grains, things
Yeah.
like that. So,
And again, I think this is kind of part of the departure from the food pyramid,
yeah,
right? Because I mean, obviously the veggies live at the top, but then you see the
fruits coming
fruits that
down.
aren't so much, but it tells you right in the words there, eat them throughout the day,
Yeah,
right? Emphasizing the importance. So,
yeah,
I think it's again, read the document. Like I
yeah.
think that's so important to just have read through that because it's not long. It won't take you long to read through it.
No, it's pretty easy to read too.
So read through the document because
Yeah,
fruits and veggies throughout the day, that's your fiber, right?
yeah,
Fiber, and then so many vitamins and minerals.
yeah,
Like to get that food from the ground is so important.
totally. I mean, the first statement is eat a variety of colorful, nutrient dense vegetables and fruits.
Hmm.
Great.
What does that mean? Just quickly, nutrient dense.
I mean, whole foods are going to be considered nutrient dense primarily because they have so many different like vitamins, micronutrients, and then obviously the carbohydrates are
Hmm.
fiber laced. That's how I like to describe it,
I
but
like
it
that.
comes
Yeah,
with fiber, right? So it's fiber rich. And that's where the nutrients are coming from.
sure.
So
Do potatoes and corn and where do they fit in this?
I think they do. In the scheme or in the range of nutrient dense, they are going to be on the higher end over like if you look at all foods, everything from the most processed to whole food, they're going to be up here,
Mhm.
but they're going to be in the lower end when it comes to whole food, I would say. So
Sure,
they're still a nutrient dense option.
100%. And I think it's really important that with those foods specifically, like it's not so much about like limiting them, but about consuming them within the confines of a meal,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're going to sit down and make and have potatoes, right? A mashed potato without the skin, filled with butter and bacon bits and extra shredded cheese, that's probably not the kind of potato we're talking about when we mean whole foods,
Yeah.
right? But if you're having a baked potato and still throw a little cheese on there, right? Chop up some green onions, do something like make it look good.
Sure.
Um, that's going to be good because there's going to be fiber coming from the skin of that potato. There's all kinds of
Mhm.
good nutrients in there. Like potatoes are rich in potassium, right? That was one of the things my college professor she was super excited about. She's like, listen, potatoes have lots of potassium, more potassium than bananas, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's crazy. And so but it was her way of saying like don't try not to buy into the rhetoric that you hear where
Sure.
it's like these foods are good, these foods are bad. Everything can fit.
Yeah.
You just have to be smart about it.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the keyword variety comes
Hmm.
in, mixing
Absolutely.
it up. And then actually the second thing it says, I didn't say this statement, but eat whole vegetables and fruits in their original form or close to it. It doesn't
Yeah.
say and close to it, but I'm going to add
Yeah.
that part there
You can
because
chop it
it's
up.
okay
You
to
can,
mix. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So, yeah. Anything else to that area?
I don't think so. I mean, I think is there a serving size or serving number
It
recommendation
just
there?
says for a 2,000 calorie dietary pattern, 3 servings of vegetables per day and 2 servings of fruits per day.
So I wanted to point that out because I think that is like really easy to understand. for people, right? And so I've been telling people, I've kind of pulled those numbers. I've said 5, right? 5 servings of fruits and vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ideally, we get 3 veggies, 2 fruits, but some days it's 3 fruits, 2 veggies,
Sure.
and variety, right?
Yeah.
And I just think that having that number there, and again, that's a number that got pulled forward from the previous guidelines, and again, a departure somewhat from the food pyramid, and so I think it just makes it easy.
Remind me, is it half a banana a serving,
No,
or is it a
I think it's
full?
one medium banana.
Okay, so I'm at 3.5 servings of fruit for today already, and it's
Hey, you're
10:20
doing
a.m.
good. Yeah, but you're a superstar, so
I'm
just
not a super.
you're a fruits and veggies guy.
I love my
You just
vet.
can't
Yeah.
help it. You just can't
So,
help it.
okay, next one.
I'm at 1, by the way.
Hey, that's okay. You're halfway there.
Yep.
Halfway there. Okay.
Tomatoes, onions, it was great. Pico de gallo on my eggs this morning.
Oh, nice. Heck yeah.
So good.
Speaking of, well, I was going to say guac. You didn't say guac, but when I think of pico, I think of guac. Incorporate healthy fats.
Ooh, this is a big one. Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep.
All right. Healthy fats are plentiful in many whole foods, such as meats, poultry, eggs, omega-3 rich seafood, nuts, seeds, full-fat dairy, olives, and avocados. Okay.
Okay.
It says when cooking with or adding fats to meals, prioritize, I repeat, prioritize oils with essential fatty acids such as, I repeat, I didn't say it, olive oil, I repeat, olive oil. Other options can include butter or beef tallow. So I really wanted to emphasize that. And then the last thing it talks about is, in general, saturated fat consumption, which actually I'm going to slow this one down too. I forgot about this part. I'm sorry. In general, saturated fat consumption should not exceed 10% of total daily calories. Significantly limiting highly processed foods will help meet that goal. Totally agree. More high-quality research is needed to determine which types of dietary fats best support long-term health. That statement I highlighted just because I don't know if I quite agree with that. There are many meta-analyses out there that go through so many different studies that have looked at substituting saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat and monounsaturated fat sources, which are going to be more oils than the solids, right? So if you have a highly saturated fat, it's going to be solid at room temperature, and then more unsaturated fat, it's going to be liquid at room temperature. That's kind of the easy way to piece that apart. Anyway, these studies and the meta-analyses over them show that when you swap out saturated fat primarily for, you're still having some saturated fat, but for those PUFAs and those MUFAs, you are reducing your risk for cardiovascular disease, for all-cause mortality, for all the things that are going to eventually catch up to you and unfortunately, take your life. So that's important to point out.
I agree. I think that when it comes to the question of fats, this is another one of those things that the pendulum has just swung so wildly back and forth.
Yeah.
Right. And years ago, now at this point, fat became a villain. And so everything swung to low fat, no fat. Right. We know now that that is not the way to think about it. Right. Controlling your saturated fat intake is extremely important because of what you already mentioned, the relationship between mortality and intake of saturated fats, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where, as you mentioned already with the butter or they mentioned beef tallow, those have gotten a really big push, specifically beef tallow on social media lately, right? Research just when it comes to a lot of like heart disease and anything like that, like unsaturated fat is shown to be the better option. That's it, right? Like that's it.
So you already know I did this. I didn't tell you, but I went and did some calculations, right? Just because I really wanted to emphasize that. So based on all this kind of mainly talking or tailored to 2,000 calorie diet patterns, which I think is digestible for us to talk about, 10% of 2,000 calories would then be about 22 grams of saturated fat in total for each day. And that's where if we go back to the dairy over here, and it talks about 3 servings a day of dairy.
Of full fat dairy.
Of full fat dairy, right?
That's what they say.
I went and looked at Obviously, whole milk's easy one to pick on, and then I looked at whole milk yogurt too because it also talks about yogurts, right, and
Mhm.
full fat yogurts. Both of those, based on I can't remember. I'm not going to actually say the brands. Were 5 grams per serve. Okay, so if you do
Of
three
saturated
servings
fat?
of saturated fat, and total fat was 8 to 9, depending on what you looked at.
And your serving is 1 cup of milk, half a cup of yogurt? What was our
I think it might have been 3/4 cup of yogurt, and then
Okay, yeah, that sounds
yeah,
yep,
and then 1 cup
yep,
of milk.
yep.
Yeah. So it came out to be 3 servings would then be 15 grams total. So you're already taking care of almost
Mhm.
all of your total saturated fat that you need for that 2,000 calories in that day, right? And that goes very quickly. Another thing that we didn't talk about is also when you add in full fat dairy or just higher fats is higher calories too. And that's where like the nuance comes. I will agree that a lot of times when you do reduce fat, we pump in sugar in order to get the taste profile to be adequate,
Sure.
right? So that is something to look for when you do low fat.
That's common in a processed food.
Yes.
In a processed food.
Yes. Yep. But anyway, going back to the saturated fat. So if you do 3 full fat servings of dairy,
Mhm.
and let's say you just have, I don't know, even if it was steak for dinner, right? You're exceeding that pretty quickly. And it's not that on one day, if you exceed your saturated fat, like total need,
Yeah.
you're going to have heart disease in 2 weeks. It's doing that consistently over time. One analogy that I really like, think of it like investing, right? If you're doing this at a younger age and consistently investing at that higher rate of saturated fat, your risk of heart disease is going to amplify and you're going to most likely have that sooner than the person who is investing a little bit less,
Yep.
right? Obviously, it's kind of like golf, right? Unfortunately, you want the lower score. In
Yeah.
investing, you want the higher
Yeah,
score,
yeah, yeah.
but that's kind of a good way to think of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, again, the way that it's being spoken about, the way that it's being talked about, whether it's on social media or even press conferences,
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, verbatim, the war against saturated fat has ended, but they didn't. This is the exact same recommendation as the previous guidelines. The exact same
Yep.
verbiage. So
Yep.
yeah,
So I think it's, again, really, really important that, like, number 1, you understand these guidelines. You
yeah,
read through them and say, "Okay," because like we've said, they're kind of contradicting themselves in
yeah,
places. And so I think we look for trends, right?
yeah,
And the trend is less than 10% of your calories coming from saturated fat. That's the
yes,
trend. And not that full fat dairy might, prove at some point to be like a great thing for us,
hmm,
right? But I think it's also super reasonable to say maybe I have 1 serving of
hmm,
full fat dairy per
yeah,
day, and then I look at other options for my other servings of dairy if I'm someone who wants to do that, right?
sure,
So moderation, truly moderation. I think it always comes back to that. And
hmm,
it's a hard thing to help someone understand, but variety and moderation is what makes up a great diet.
yeah. And again, this is lacking that nuance, right? So if someone is eating 2,000 calories, and again, the recommendation is less than 22 grams, if you are doing 3 servings of full fat dairy, maybe you are having that steak a couple of times a week or once a week. But then most other weeks or days of the week, it's chicken or turkey or, beans, legumes, soy products that are
Yeah.
less in saturated fat and aren't necessarily putting you over. So
Yeah.
then that way, some days maybe you're at 30 and other days you're hitting 2022,
Hmm.
you're still within that range that you talked about and hitting kind of that
Yeah.
happy medium.
And like you said too, like being smart about it as well with the like what you cook with too,
Yeah.
right? If like, hey, this I really want to cook with butter. Okay, maybe that's not a day that we do full fat dairy.
Yeah.
Pick
Exactly.
something different.
And I think another thing too is even if you think, oh, well, instead of cooking with butter, I'm going to swap out these oils. Well, oils don't not oils have all fat. All fat sources, natural fat sources have saturated and unsaturated fats. So even when you cook with oils too, you're going to add in a little bit of
Yeah,
saturated fat there. So that's something to be thinking about as well.
just be
You aren't
aware.
just getting away from it if you,
Just
you
be
know,
aware. Be
yeah,
aware, right?
yeah,
Know what's going in your body. And it doesn't mean that you have to be policing yourself to an
no,
extreme because we need food. We need to eat to live.
yeah,
It is essential. So you enjoy it and make foods that make you happy and are fun. But just know what's going in your body. so that way you can be making good choices for yourself.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to end on here is it does take a little bit of specificity at the start. And like what I mean by that is like you do need to kind of learn and find someone that can help educate you. But then after that period, you can kind of, ride the bike yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so serious. You don't have to find a way where you can sit perfectly and push that pedal perfectly. You can just run and jump on it.
Yep.
And you're ready to go. Right. So
Exactly.
unfortunately, we will have to put a pin in this one and come back to it and maybe finish it. Either we'll do a part one and part two.
We'll do a part two.
Yeah. So what we have left is like whole grains, processed foods, a lot of good conversation. And then I think what I want to finish that one with too is like, again, kind of who this is for and things like that. So this is fun. I love this.
Awesome. This is fun. Yeah. We'll be excited to get part 2 going. Thanks for a great conversation, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I'm
cool.
having
Ready
a good
to
time.
go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Be you.